Hey, everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today, we have a super awesome guest. Her name is Jeri Kay, and she's the superintendent at a school district in Missouri. And they have two elementary schools, one middle school, and one high school. And Jeri Kay, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. We are located in central Missouri at a district called Gasconade County R2. And we're located in central Missouri between St. Louis and Jefferson City. And our office is in a town called Owensville. However, our district reaches into four different counties in the state. We have about 354 square miles. We're probably within the top 15 largest districts in the state of Missouri. As far as landmass wise, we have about 38 school buses we run all day that run 354 square miles.
That's enormous. 300-ish square miles?
Absolutely.
Woo-wee. Okay, that's huge. That's ginormous. Awesome. Well, you know what? Everyone wants to hear the same thing. When we're blessed to get someone like you, Jeri Kay, on our podcast, they all want to hear your story. It's all about you. So just so you know, would you, well, first, even before the story, could you share with your journey of how you became a superintendent? I love listening to that. I know our listeners do. And yeah, could you share that with us?
Absolutely. It goes back a long time ago, like in a land far, far away. But I married my husband, who we're still married today, when I was 18 years old. Started taking college classes when I was in high school, before dual credit was a thing, before the internet was around. My kids laugh at me. When I say my kids, I mean my school kids, because I'm older than the internet, which is hard for them to believe that the internet has not always been here. But started a community college and received an associate's, and went on and received my bachelor's degree in political science from Arkansas State University, which is in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So when we talk about that, I was from Southeast Missouri originally, not Central Missouri. Was going to go to law school. My husband and I found out we were expecting a child, so things kind of changed a little bit. In saying that, I went to work for the state government for child support enforcement, and I decided that I really wanted to work the hours that my kids went to school. Being a mother, that was very important to me. So along that time, my husband worked for a steel mill. So when we want to talk, the road wasn't just smooth. The steel mill sold to this company that was supposed to be an amazing company. And so if you go back to your history books, you will learn that that company was Enron. So he come home from work one day and had no job, no retirement. We just bought a brand new home. And so the question was he has a diesel college degree, so was he going to go back to college, or I already had a bachelor's? Was I going to go ahead and continue to move up? Around the same time, the superintendent in this very small district that I worked at the time come and asked me to get my master's. And it was not in administration. My master's was in reading, because that's what the district needed at the time. Because there's a law in Missouri that there used to be that you had to have someone with a special reading certificate, which is a master's degree. So I'm working, I have two children, and I go to school to get this master's degree to help out the school that I work for. When we talk about that, I love reading. That is my passion. But I knew that I wanted to help the district out any way that I could. So I went to work as a reading specialist for this district after I served as a truancy officer and a classroom para for a year. So after that point, I went on and decided, I think administration is for me. The local RPDCs, the professional development centers in the state of Missouri, had contacted me because they were talking about data in classrooms and how to enhance instruction. So I was very fortunate that the Southeast RPDC, located in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, asked me to go train to learn about data analysis. And at this point, I expanded my career to a complete district-wide data analysis program and was given the opportunity to train principals and I was just a classroom teacher. And so I'm training all of these principals at how to collect data and how to enhance instruction and tell their story through the use of data. So I thought I might as well go ahead and get my administration. And so I got my master's in administration, and in Missouri you have to have a specialist. And so I started that. And then finally I finished my doctorate through the University of Missouri in Columbia back in 2016. But in the process, they tell you not to ever change jobs when you're working on a doctorate. Well, I did not listen, and I became a high school principal in another town in southeast Missouri. And then I finished my doctorate during that time. And then I was given the opportunity through connections. I knew that the assistant superintendent role was open here in Gasconade County, R2, and I applied for that position. And I worked as assistant superintendent for 5 years. And this past June was our previous superintendent. He retired and went through the interview process and became the superintendent July 1st.
That's amazing. I love it. I love the story. And I love how you bring in the family dynamic too. That's really cool. And I had no idea that your passion is reading. That's something I struggled with on a personal level. I was such a slow reader. And even now I use audiobooks. I love Audible with Amazon. I must have, I don't even know, 300-400 books in Audible on my phone. Everything it's right here. I have a whole library right here. It's nuts. And you go on a hike or a walk or driving, and I just hit a button. It's like, boom, there's a book. And I live in California now in LA. So there's always traffic. If it's a 2-mile drive, it's like, hey, it's going to take an hour. Okay, let's listen to a book. But this is totally outside of the normal questions, but I think our listeners, especially the students, do you have any tips, even 1 or 2 top tips for increasing not only, well, maybe retention and speed for reading?
So when you're looking at retention, that is one thing that you almost have to look at the learning styles of students. My son is an auditory learner, whereas my daughter just learned by traditional reading methods. So when you talk about the Audible book, that is something for him that you have to really, that's important to him. Even to this day, he uses a lot of speech to text and text to talk. Those tools are very important. And people think that if you can read really fast, that you can comprehend or you can retain what you read. That's not always the case. So sometimes going back and rereading is the best way to retain that information. When you look at reading fiction versus nonfiction, nonfiction is a little bit harder to understand. So you are going to have to go back and reread. So not just focusing on the speed, but the retention and making sure that you're going back to make sure you have grasped the information in the materials you're reading is very important. But that's also going to speed up your reading. The more you read, the better your fluency is going to be. And then also going back to check for information and clarify facts in the stories that you're reading, whether they be fiction or nonfiction, is very important in developing those skills.
Love it. Love it. And is this a myth or is it legit? I saw someone, I think it's some type of online course that people can buy. I think it's Mind Valley, but I saw someone reading, and he, I think, had dyslexia as a child. He really struggled reading. And I think through his whole life, it just became a major passion of his. And now he put together a program. And one of the tips he was saying is using our finger to underline the words. And he was saying
tracking is very important.
Okay,
yes.
So that is legit. And he was saying sometimes little by little, he would speed up the tracking, and he would still retain it and comprehend it. And after a while, he said it felt like his finger was starting a little fire on the pages. So yeah, tracking. Okay. So that's real. That's a real thing.
That is a real thing. And, you know, when you talk about reading, that starts, my daughter had a baby back in May, and my daughter-in-law just had one. But the biggest thing is when they're a baby, you start the tracking, you start the mouth movement, the formation of words, and you start showing the black and white books, because all of that is part of the art of reading, and it is very necessary for development.
Love it. This is great. It's so fun. I never, I mean, I usually just stick to the script, but it's so fun. And now when you're saying you have a passion for reading, I'm thinking that's super cool. Okay. So thank you for sharing that. And, did you have for me, I struggled in third grade. The wheels fell off the bus, so to speak, when I went to school, and all of a sudden kids started picking on me and bullying me. And it made it school a place that I used to love going to, a place that I was terrified to go, because I thought, I don't want to go get beat up again or get picked on. So bullying was really tough for me. And that exacerbated the anxiety that I was already struggling with. So is there anything that you may have struggled with in elementary school or middle school or high school that you're comfortable sharing?
In elementary school I loved school. I've always loved school from the beginning all the way, even today, just walking in. But looking back, and my biggest struggle was with extracurriculars. I wasn't an athlete. I was a majorette. So, I played in band, and I was a baton twirler. And probably one of the biggest letdowns and overcoming thing is they changed the number of majorettes they were going to have. They went from 10 to 4 due to budget constraints.
Bummer.
So I had been a majorette and twirled the baton since I was 3 years old. And that's a very complex skill set. I guess there's not a lot of people that do that. But
it looks hard. It looks super hard. It looks
fire, multiple batons, knives, all of those things. But the feeling when what you felt like you were the most passionate about is just kind of, that dream is crushed. And you see a lot of kids that have to face those. And whenever life throws those obstacles at you, and I remember growing up, neither one of my parents were from, neither one of them had a college background. And when I was in elementary school, like I said, I had a ton of friends, and we were from a middle-class family, and we had something that went on in my family, and my dad lost his job. And so when you talk about struggles when you're in school, those are things that, coming from a middle-class family, that, you don't talk about those things, because you sure don't want someone in a smaller town where your identity is based on what your parents do, where they work, how much do you have? Are you wearing the right clothes? Or are you not wearing the right clothes? Those struggles are really, really real. And I remember in junior high, things were really tough, and my parents never, we never talked about it. We didn't talk about it with our friends. And one of my friends found out, and the tides started to turn, and things started looking better for my family. But one of the things that a student that I had went to school, and I said a friend, but it's an acquaintance, was just, hey, I'll be your friend now, because now you have more money than what you had then. And my parents never raised us to look at how much money someone has, and, do you treat someone different because they don't have as much as you? And I think that's the biggest thing that may be contributing nowadays to some of the bullying, things of that nature, is we were taught when we were growing up that you're no better than anyone else, but they're not any better than you. And you hold your head high, and you do the best with what you have. And I think that with the breakdown, sometimes almost like the family unit breakdown, people are so busy working, and even your households that are from 2-parent families, both parents work now, where when I grew up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I remember when she had to go to work to help out with the family, and they did, but I knew then that I was going to do whatever it took so my family would be better. And I have 2 amazing parents. They're still married after all of these years. And that's great, because I think that going through some of those difficulties, if I did not have my go-to people, my parents, my grandparents, that would be, I probably wouldn't have turned out the way I turned out. And, even when you talk about working and then going back to school, working a full-time job, working on a doctorate while you're working full-time, you have to depend on others. And you have to have a support system. And when you look into today's schools, and when you look at bullying, kids have to have a support system. And that's something that we try to do here at Gascon County R2, is to make sure that our kids have a very strong support system. And we have a lot of programs in place for that.
Could you share some of those? And before you share, thank you for sharing what you just shared. That was beautiful. And it sounds like your parents are amazing. They're still together, which is awesome. They raised you with, hey, you're not better than anyone else, but no one else is better than you. Keep your head high. And I love how you said that it's such a, just ethically and morally, such a beautiful way to raise kids. So hats off to your parents. And I just really appreciate you sharing what you did. I know our listeners are going to enjoy that a lot. I did personally. That was awesome. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So
some
programs.
of
Yeah.
Programs.
Thank you.
We have several programs in place, but one of, just to go back and start within the last 5 years, as assistant superintendent for curriculum of instruction and assessment, we have sent every one of our administrators to trauma-informed schools training, because trauma is one of the aspects that will contribute to a student being bullied or causing someone to bully others because of the situation that they're in. So all of our administrators have had trauma-informed training. We go ahead and provide the professional development opportunity for them to go to the national conference. Usually it's held in St. Louis, Missouri, which is about an hour and a half from here. So that's convenient for us to be able to send, our administrators to the training to learn more about different learning styles of students, different triggers that students may face, and then also some coping mechanisms. So all of our administrators, including myself and the assistant superintendent, have been to trauma-informed training. And then we also have developed something called focus rooms. And so our focus rooms are for students who are lacking social skills that they need to be successful. So I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. What we look at is, if a student doesn't know how to read, you don't look at that student and say, he doesn't know how to read, he's never going to know how to read, so just forget him, we're just going to keep going. Or if you're struggling in math, well, they can't add, they're never going to learn to add, so I'm not going to teach them math anymore because they have no chance of getting it. So why do we look at students who don't have the social skills necessary to be successful and say, well, they should know better, so I'm just going to sweep that under the rug, and I'm not going to worry about the student anymore. I'm not going to help them be successful. Why would we do that? We don't do that for any other academic subject. So why would we do that for social skills? So in our district, we have 3 focus rooms, and they are located at both of our elementaries and our middle schools. And what that does is we provide a focus room technician, and they have been trained in trauma-informed behaviors and how to handle those behaviors and how to teach the social skills that are necessary for students to be successful. Because our thought process behind this is, if we can teach them at a younger age, by the time they get to high school, they can be more successful and know how to act in a social situation. And also, what are the expectations at school versus the expectations at home versus the expectations on an extracurricular activity or an extracurricular club or sporting event. So, that takes a lot of work. And our focus room technicians, they log every minute that they spend with students. And they submit a report every month to how many of their visits are proactive visits, meaning we're checking in with this student because we know they struggle. We know there's something special going on at school today that they may not know how to exactly handle that situation. So we're going to, before that situation occurs, how are we going to prevent a meltdown? How are we going to prevent feelings of anxiety? And then they have to also log their reactive minutes. And I will tell you, the first year of implementation, there were a lot more reactive visits than proactive visits. So there were a lot of kids that did not have those social skills necessary. But now that we're 3 years into the program, we have very few reactive minutes and we have a lot more proactive minutes. And so that is very important. The teachers have to work alongside with this focus room technician to talk about what triggered the behaviors, what behaviors were actually triggered. Another thing with our focus rooms is, not only are they just working with the teachers, but they're also working with the administrators. And then in our district, we use CBIS for positive behavior intervention support at kindergarten through 5th grade. And both of our schools are gold. They have obtained gold level status for implementing those programs. And then we use behavior intervention support team at the middle school. So when we move up to high schoolers, do you just forget about these kids? Absolutely not. We use Capturing Kids' Hearts, which is another program that we use. And when I first came here, I'd not heard of this program, so I was not sure exactly how the program worked. But it talks about meeting kids with a handshake. So COVID's been a little different to navigate through this. And also posting social norms for the classroom. And so those are some programs that go along with our focus rooms just to provide some support. But the interesting thing that I learned during Capturing Kids' Hearts was what a difference a handshake can make, because you can definitely tell if a student something's off that day just by a handshake. And so meeting those kids, greeting those kids every morning, that remained. We didn't shake hands. We come up with some other, are you doing a fist bump? What are you doing? But we come up with a different way to greet our kids. But greeting kids every day is very important. So that is one of the programs I'm very proud of. We also have 2 family school liaisons. And what you're probably thinking is, what in the world is this? It's basically a school-based social worker. But if you knock on a family's door and you tell them you're a social worker, they think you're coming to take their kids away. And when we hired a school-based social worker, we wanted to be someone to partner with our families. And so that's why we call ours family school liaisons, because they are a partner. They're a partner with our families, but then sometimes they can provide supportive services with families that someone at the state Division of Family Services they wouldn't necessarily provide. We have what's called a crisis team. And our community also it's called Owensville Cares. It's a Facebook page. And any need that any of our families have had that has hit that Owensville Cares Facebook page has been met within the same day, whether that be beds, refrigerators, couches, clothing. They have all met every need that we've ever had within the same day that it's been posted. So those are things for a rural school that encompasses so much landmass that we do really well here.
That's incredible. Love it. I love everything you're doing for the K through 5, and then you have the middle schoolers, and then even for the high school kids, you're taking care of K through 12, which is amazing. And there have been so many studies that have been done. I don't know if it was the Harvard Business Review or the New York Times, something I've read or heard that employers, they're caring less and less about, did you get a 4.0? And then it used to be, well, you need a 4.0 plus you need all kinds of extracurricular activities. And then maybe we'll interview you. And then now it's, hey, how do you work? It's all SEL, 100%. Not so concerned about your grades. Or in extracurriculars, not a big deal. How are you creative? How imaginative are you? Do you have a strong imagination? Are you a good problem solver? Do you work well with others? Are you good in teams? What's your strength? You're hired. Great. Yeah, the 2.0, who cares? You're hired. Sorry, 4.0 and all the extracurriculars, we're not interested. So the SEL skills are everything. And it helps kids feel good about themselves, when they love themselves, they can truly love others. And you know all this. And it's just they overcome those limits that they put on themselves. They learn how to really get centered and have empathy for themselves, empathy for others. It's just it's so critical. So I love that you guys are doing that and supporting your entire district. So way to go. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
And did I miss anything else? Any final thoughts or anything, Jerry K? Or Dr. Hardy? What would you?
No problem. First name's great here. The final thoughts are, education. I tell my staff every week, I try to send them just a weekly recap and what's coming up for the next week. But at the end of the day, education is hard, but it doesn't matter what job you do, it's hard. But we all got in this, we all joined this profession, or I hope we did, because we want to see kids succeed. And at the end of the day, we have one of the best jobs out there, and we get to shape America's future. So these are the next leaders that we have. So it's our responsibility to be the best that we can be, so that we can help them learn who they want to become.
Jerry K, love it. I couldn't agree more. My mom was a teacher. I have so much respect for teachers. And then on the admin side as well, because a lot of you were teachers at one point, right? And then go into the admin side. And you guys have the most important job in the world. So thank you for what you do, Jerry K, and thank you to your staff. Thank you to your to everyone in your district. Thank you for being a guest today.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was so great to meet you today.